In addition to the blade failing to flip out, there are several other complaints that can't be considered as manufacturing defects. For instance, there are those where the rubber covering of the control buttons has worn through. This is often caused by using the key fob with a nearly flat battery, whereupon the lock or unlock buttons are pressed harder and harder to try and make it work, or by a sharp fingernail piercing the rubber skin. Another example of an unfair claim is where the body of the key is visibly damaged, like this one, for example. Even with the complaint of the blade not flipping out, there are often instances where it's very obvious that it's down to customer misuse, such as here, where both keys have been returned with an identical problem. Now, when you're ready to try a couple of questions to check your knowledge, click on the forward arrow. Of all the complaints received relating to ignition keys, the most common is the blade failing to flip out when pressing the button. The problem is caused by a small internal operating spring becoming detached, thereby losing its tension. Generally, this is as a result of careless use by the owner. For example, turning the key fiercely in the ignition without first releasing the tension on the steering lock by jiggling the wheel slightly. The fierce twisting action tends to cause the key's casing to open up slightly, just sufficient for the spring to become detached. It can also be caused by the knee accidentally knocking the key when entering the vehicle, or by using the key to prise something, or even by simply dropping it on the floor. However, if the key shows no outward signs of serious damage, then in most instances it can be easily repaired within a few minutes. So here's how it's done. Firstly, gently open up the key's body using a coin, and lay the cover and circuit board to one side. Try to avoid using a screwdriver for this operation, as they tend to damage the plastic. Next, using your fingers or a pair of pliers, remove the press button assembly by depressing it slightly and turning it anti-clockwise until its two lugs align with those in the plastic body. The spring and button assembly can then be withdrawn. Before we reassemble the key, it will be helpful if we first show you the various components that make up the button assembly. At the base of the spring is a plastic seat, a bit like a washer, that has a raised crosshead on one side. One of the crosshead's ridges is longer than the other, which you'll need to pay attention to during reassembly. The crosshead engages with a similar shaped recess in the base of the key, just visible through this hole. And on the reverse side of the plastic seat is a groove which locates on the spring's tang. The other end of the spring is attached to the inside of the button, and the button itself has external lugs that are offset. The final component of the assembly is the key blade. It has an internal groove into which the lugs of the button engage. So, now we've looked at the different components, let's show you how to reassemble the key and tension up the spring. First, ensure the hole in the key blade is aligned with that in the casing. Next, place the plastic seat onto the spring, making sure it engages with the end of the spring. Now offer up the button assembly to the casing, making sure the arrangement of the crosshead on the seat matches that inside the case. As you insert the button, the spring seat should engage with the crosshead in the casing. The button's lugs must also be roughly in line with the cutouts in the casing. You now need to apply just sufficient downward pressure to keep the spring and seat engaged with the casing as you turn the button one complete turn anti-clockwise to tension the spring. As the button's lugs once again align with the cutouts in the casing, depress the button and turn it slightly clockwise to engage the lugs with the grooves in the blade. At this point, the spring should be retensioned and the flip-out blade should once again function correctly. It must be said that turning the button one complete turn while keeping just sufficient tension on the spring to keep its seat engaged with the casing is fiddly, so don't be surprised if it takes you several attempts before you succeed. Practice makes perfect. You can, of course, replay this sequence as often as you like to review the operation. The final step of the repair is to clip the body back together again, taking care that the small circuit board is located correctly.